Hey guys, Skills Sessions here. I can't believe it has been over a year since I made my last video. And actually, my last video was based on this ongoing crisis that has been ravaging the world. And if you look back at my past two videos, and I think there's going to be like a link in the corner to my playlist and also in the description about what's been happening about this whole crisis, you can see the evolution of things changing. And just very basically, you can see that in the very beginning, people were debating whether or not to wear masks. And there were some rumors about people having some sort of passports implemented. And now this is the reality that has been implemented upon us, that we basically have to have a passport if we want to go about working or traveling, etc. So it's kind of scary how this whole thing just fell upon us within these past 2 years. And I can only talk about what's happened to me. I've been living in Quebec for about 4 years now, and I think I have a pretty good understanding of what's happening here. And in the very beginning, when this whole crisis started, I remember very specifically, it was Friday, March the 13th, 2020, that our leader just mentioned that, oh, yeah, we're just going to have like a 2 week lockdown of most of these places so we can try to get rid of this thing and hopefully things will go back to normal after 2 weeks. The reasoning is that, 2 weeks is the incubation period for people to develop symptoms to see whether or not they were actually infected with this thing. So it seemed pretty optimistic, and I was very impressed with our leader because I thought, yeah, this guy is pretty smart, like out of all the leaders, provincial leaders in our country, he's the first one to have this kind of lockdown, and he's at least doing something about it and addressing the issue, whereas the other premiers weren't doing anything. So, I was in full support of that. Little did I know, like 2 years later, that I would regret my initial support for this guy. He's basically the most draconian and Nazi-like leader in our country, if not in the world. I mean, a lot of things happened that made me shake my hand and just be afraid for our society. In addition to having these kind of curfews and lockdowns, that we basically were like the leaders in most of the world, having these crazy curfews and lockdowns. He had the gall, he had the audacity to say in January of this year that he's going to actually tax the people who are still not injected with this thing. And it's kind of scary that he has a lot of supporters that are like saying, yeah, you should tax these people who are not injected. And this is all made possible because the media has been very powerful in spreading its message, and basically there's no dissent whatsoever. If you have any dissent, it gets cracked down, and it's kind of scary. And this actually happened to me. I'm a very small channel. I'm just talking about things that happened to me and I can relate to because of my own experience. And this platform basically stopped me from putting out a regular video that's basically me critically thinking and just analyzing things. So it's kind of scary how, and very disgusting how there's this massive amount of censorship. And it's kind of ironic that people here are talking about freedoms when really there's not really any freedom of expression or freedom of speech, because once they deem that there's something that's dissenting, even though it makes sense, they just clamp down on it, and you can't even have a voice, even a voice as small as mine. So it makes me very amazed that when these people with this kind of agenda have such scary power, that recently, in the recent months, that the tide has been slowly turning. And you can see this, I think the first major tide was in the UK when their leaders suddenly said, okay, basically what happened was he succumbed to political pressure, and he said that all these mandates that they have, whatever the mandates that you want to talk about, the wearing the mask and being injected, travel restrictions, they're going to stop all these mandates all of a sudden. So it's kind of eye-opening. How did this happen? They had us by the balls, right? Basically. And they told us what to do and we had to do it. And if we didn't do it, then we would be punished and banned and censored and lose our jobs and lose all our freedoms. They had us by the balls, but now the tide is turning for some whatever reason. And I don't know what happened, but I'm glad it's happening. And in Canada, our country, this is slowly turning as well. In Saskatchewan, they're saying they're going to get rid of the mandates, in Manitoba as well, and Alberta. But unfortunately, in Quebec, our leader is still stubbornly holding on to this power that he has. Luckily, he finally abandoned the tax because it's ridiculous. Not only will it be challenged severely according to our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it just doesn't make sense, What does that got to do with everybody? Why are you trying to make everybody have the same thing? And this whole threat of having this tax for people who didn't get injected is kind of eye-opening and very disappointing. I always had a somewhat cynical view of humanity. I think a lot of people fail to critically think about things and they just go with the mob mentality. Whatever the media and government tells them to do, they just blindly accept it. And a lot of times it's harmless, but in these cases, it's kind of scary. And it reveals these people are kind of ghouls. And when the tax idea came out, they were saying that, yeah, let's go tax them. Let's put them in jail even. Let's severely punish them if they don't get injected. It doesn't even make sense, right? Because how can you have a one-size-fit-all health solution for this disease, right? Let's talk about cancer, right? If an 80-year-old person got cancer and a 5-year-old child got cancer, are you saying they're both going to be handled by the same thing? They're both going to get surgery no matter what? That's just insane, right? You have to go by case-by-case basis, right? There's various solutions or remedies or treatments for cancer, right? You have chemotherapy, radiology, you can have even take some pills and alternative therapies, right? Everything like that, right? And they're saying one size fits all, which does not make sense. This is not the case of telling everybody, oh, why are you like eating a chocolate bar? It's harmless and you're crazy and selfish. But that doesn't even make sense because this is not as simple as eating a chocolate bar, right? This is about injecting you with something that is basically experimental gene therapy, right? Like in Canada, we only have 4 approved items that you're allowed to take. And you can see here that there's only 4, and the 3rd and the 4th one are now kind of like set aside a little bit because they're saying that there's all these adverse side effects, so they're really trying to herd you into taking one of the first 2, right? Even though one of the first 2, they all have side effects as well. There's no way about it. And there's no long-term effects studies because this thing only came out 2 years ago. So there's no long-term effects. You're just taking a chance and seeing what's going to happen. And it's ridiculous that people are saying that, oh yeah, nothing's going to happen to you and you're selfish for not taking it and you're harming other people. But in reality, even though the story has been changing about the promotion of these things, that it doesn't matter whether you have one of these 4 in our country anyways, one of these 4, you're still able to be infected and you're still able to spread it. So that makes me question, what is the point of having these passports if you're going to have the same amount of being infected or not? And a lot of people who are so gung-ho and so supportive of these injections, they just really make me upset. They show stuff like this, if you can read it. It says, if you are not a scientist and you disagree with scientists about science, it's actually not a disagreement. You're just wrong. Science is not truth. Science is finding the truth. When science changes its opinion, it didn't lie to you. It learned more. But they just contradicted themselves. Look at this thing. How could they be wrong if they're saying science is finding the truth? And how do you find truth? You don't have an echo chamber saying, oh, this is what we think and nobody else is disagreeing. You find the truth by disagreeing. You find the truth by asking questions, by figuring out what's right and what's wrong, and then you go there, right? So how could they people who disagree, even though these are people who are so-called scientists. Mind you, there are a lot of other scientists and doctors that disagree with it. They just all been canceled and silenced. That's all. How could they be wrong if there's no absolute truth anyways, and science is the finding of truth? So they don't understand this very basic logic and this very basic reasoning. So these people are lost already. And it's kind of annoying they use this term, the anti-V, right? This doesn't even make sense. You know, I support all types of V's. They always make these things, oh, what if you didn't take your measles and, you know, you're against smallpox and stuff like that. No, okay? These are all V that went through the proper channels and went through all the proper hurdles of being studied and tested and clinical trials for years upon years. That's why we have a system in place for bringing these things to market, right? You have to have a safety mechanisms or a system, right, to test it and make sure it's safe before you release it to market and to the public, right? And we don't have that here. So the people that they say are anti-V, they're not actually anti-V, they're anti this experimental gene therapy V, okay? The recent thing that's happening, and probably a main reason why the tide is turning. In Canada, we have these people that are fed up and they launched this truck freedom convoy that basically a whole bunch of people, truckers, gathering and protesting because our national leader decided that all of a sudden, this didn't happen 2 years, you know, for all this, when this whole crazy crisis happening for the 2 years, it didn't happen. But now all of a sudden he decided that, oh, these truckers who didn't get the injected, you know, are not allowed to cross the border and all these other crazy restrictions. So if it was so important, why didn't you have it in the very beginning of or even during the past 2 years, right? Why all of a sudden you're saying this? It doesn't even make sense. It's kind of like the UK all of a sudden dropping all their mandates. If it was so important, if people are like turning into zombies unless they get their injection, why don't they stand firm? No, this is for your own good. We're going to have these mandates no matter if it's unpopular and political suicide. I still have to enforce these mandates. It's for the greater good. But it's not, right? If it was, they would still maintain these mandates. The very fact that they decide to get rid of these mandates shows that it's not very important. And this is what's happening in the UK, and this is now what's happening in Canada with all these other provinces slowly but surely getting rid of their mandates. And the truckers, thank God, and I really appreciate the efforts that they're doing. They're putting themselves on the line, and they're basically sacrificing and fighting for us, you know, people like us who are not very bold or just for whatever reason are cannot just go out and protest along with them. I tip my hat to them. You know, these guys are the real heroes, you know, that are standing up for our rights. And the crazy thing is, like, our national leader is painting them as like misogynist, racists, and all these crazy criminals and all these things. Like, what does that got to do with a movement? The whole movement of the truckers, the freedom convoy, is to have a peaceful protest in the nation's capital of Ottawa. It's just to say to the Canadian government that we had enough of these crazy mandates. They didn't do any good, and actually they did a lot of harm, and it's time to put it to the stop. And they're trying to smear them, you know, smear these truckers saying that they're all these negative things. But let's assume that they are. What does that got to do with what they want, which is basically an end of these mandates, right? What did these racists have to do, or misogynists, women haters, and, you know, all these people have to do with ending the mandates? It doesn't even make sense. Smarter people will see through all this nonsense and know that the truckers are here fighting for our freedom. But there's still a large majority of people who are still brainwashed and who still support the people who are against these truckers. And they're saying very ironic things. Like right now, it's probably happening for a few weeks now in Ottawa. Things are being clogged to a standstill, and because of the amount of trucks clogging up the roadways, people are not functioning, and some of the business are suffering because people are not allowed to come and go. And they're saying that these truckers are bad for business, they're affecting livelihoods, and they're just not good. They're just stopping people from living their lives. And this is the utter irony of this. They didn't complain for the whole 2 years what the government has done to them, basically killing their small businesses, losing their jobs if they refuse to get the jab, right? Stuff like that. And they're complaining about a few weeks of these truckers doing it. These truckers are here for you, for your freedoms, okay? And they're not here to disrupt your business, all right? The government did that already and did that damn well for the past 2 years and so. These people who are anti-truckers, they want to be more repressed, right? They want to be more governed, they want more government, they want to be subjected to more draconian measures, which is just ridiculous. You know, if this whole thing was good, right? If all these Vs were good, why are these makers of these Vs asking and they got immunity from people who suffer side effects? You know, why? And also, why are they delaying all these release of data for all their research? If it's so good, they should release it right away and tell people who are against it to shut up, because look at these data. All these data are glowing. They're showing that our product works and you should take it, because if you don't take it, you're an idiot. That's not the case. They're trying to hide and delay for years. I think one of these makers were trying to delay the release of the data for 75 years, which is ridiculous. Where did they come up with this number, 75? Luckily, the judge presiding over that case overruled them and told them you got to release in 8 months. But still, you know, that's should have been released yesterday. What are they hiding? You know, people don't question stuff like that. I don't know what's going to happen now, but the tide is slowly turning, but not turning fast enough. I mean, it's kind of disappointing what happened in our neck of the woods in Quebec. And it's kind of scary that our leader is pretty much the most draconian and the most Nazi-like. It's scary. I mean, even in the world, I think maybe one or two other nations were bold enough or scary enough to try to affect this tax for people who didn't get the injection, right? I think Austria is thinking of doing that and planning to enact that next month. And we are the only one in North America, I think, that thought about. Luckily, he shut up with that and got, you know, taken down and took it off the table. But, you know, in January, it was a very scary time for me. You know, I was seriously thinking of whether to leave this province and go elsewhere, because this is just crazy that they want to force people to get this injection. You know, this is not the case of eating a chocolate bar, like I said. You know, there are side effects, and this is like unknown, this thing. This is not even like a regular one, you know? I might even take a regular one, but this is just crazy. So, I don't know. That's all I gotta say about this right now. I mean, if you look back at my past videos, it's kind of scary how this came to it. You know, slowly but surely, this creeping agenda was affected, and now we are basically, a lot of us have to be forced to take it if we want to function in society. And the ironic thing is, we're not really even functioning. There's still lockdowns. I mean, there's still a lot of places that are not open. We're still waiting for places to open. We still need passports for the places that are open and are not deemed to be essential, which is crazy. So we're still living in a not free society, even though if you got the injection. So I don't know. This whole past year has been insanity. That's all I gotta say. And only now this tide has been slowly turning, but not fast enough. That's my opinion. I don't know what your thoughts are, but please leave me a comment below if you have any good views or questions or things you want to say. That's it for now. Skill Sessions out. Share, like, comment, and subscribe, because you know Skill Sessions has the skills to satisfy.